My name is Harper, and I thought coming home after my mother's death would be the start of healing. Instead, I found locked doors, cold eyes, and a lie that nearly stole everything she left for me: our house, her bakery, and the legacy she built with love. My father's silence cut deeper than betrayal. This is the story of how I took it all back, not with anger, but with clarity, courage, and flour-dusted hands. If you've ever felt erased in your own story, this one's for you. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe some legacies are worth fighting for. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode of Harper's journey. I didn't lose my mother the day she died. I started losing her the day my father brought another woman into our home. There are moments in life that split you clean down the middle. Before, after, and everything in between becomes a blur you can't quite place on the map of your memory. The day I came back to that house, our house, was one of those moments. The air still held the faintest trace of cinnamon and rosemary, like a ghost had just finished baking and slipped out the back door. I dropped my suitcase at the threshold of the kitchen, and for a minute, I didn't move. The morning light streamed in across the old ceramic tiles, hitting the place on the counter where my mom used to rest her elbows while waiting for the oven timer to chime. Everything looked exactly the same, and somehow, it didn't. My name is Harper Collins. I'm 25 years old, and 3 weeks ago I graduated from art school with a degree I can't afford to use. My mother, Olivia Collins, chef, baker, and the most relentlessly hopeful person I've ever known, wasn't there to see it. She passed away 3 months ago. Cancer, fast, and merciless. She left me 2 things: this house and the bakery she built from scratch with her own 2 hands. And somehow, I was still standing here, suitcase in hand, like I needed permission to walk through my own door. It wasn't just grief. It was something colder, heavier. It was him, Jack Collins, my father. Not quite estranged, not quite present. He had a habit of being gone just enough to make you question if he was ever really there. After my mom died, he reappeared like a ghost with a new life clinging to his sleeve. Madison. A woman with a bright laugh and sharper eyes who moved into the house like she had always belonged there. And Abigail, her daughter, 14, opinionated, dismissive. The kind of teenager who took up too much space in a room, especially when that room was mine. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief was a trickster, that Madison changing the curtains and repainting the front room was her way of helping. But I started noticing things. Mom's recipe box had disappeared from the kitchen drawer. The rolling pin with the green handle, her favorite, gone. The portrait I painted of her for her 50th birthday had been taken down from the hallway. No one mentioned it. No one asked. The walls were quiet, and so was I. "You need to focus on your future," my dad had said, brushing my questions off like lint from his shirt. "Madison's just trying to keep things from falling apart." But it wasn't falling apart. It was being rearranged, rewritten, reclaimed. And the worst part? I let them. For a while. Because I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe letting go meant letting someone else change things. But letting go of my mother didn't mean erasing her. And I hadn't even begun to understand how far they were willing to go until the day I came back from New York and found my key no longer worked. People talk about grief like it's loud, like it screams in your ear and rips your chest open with every breath. But mine was quiet. It moved in like fog through the floorboards, slow, invisible, heavy. And with it came the rearranging, of drawers, of closets, of boundaries. At first, I thought I was just being sensitive. Madison was always smiling, always sweet. She insisted on making dinner every night, organic, gluten-free, carefully plated like she was auditioning for a food blog I didn't ask to follow. "Harper, would you mind if we swapped out the cushions in the living room? These feel a little musty." I nodded, because I didn't know how to say no without sounding unhinged. Then came the curtains, then the rug, then the kitchen towels. She started replacing things I didn't even know had been missing until I reached for them, like the butter dish shaped like a lemon that Mom used every Sunday, now mysteriously replaced with something minimalist and gray. And then there was Abigail. She stomped through the hallways like she'd lived there her whole life, her music blaring through her AirPods, tick-tocking in the living room with her ring light aimed right at the bookshelf where Mom kept her cookbooks. I once found her filming herself dancing in the kitchen. In Mom's kitchen. I didn't say anything. I just walked in, turned off the light, and left her in the dark with her ring light flickering like a dying star. "Teenagers," Madison said with a laugh, brushing off my silence. My dad didn't notice. Or if he did, he pretended not to. He spent most of his days at work or locked in his office, as if his job as a real estate broker was the only part of himself worth maintaining. He started saying things like, "We're a family now," as if the word meant the same thing to all of us. But it didn't. One night, I found myself staring at the spot above the fireplace where my painting of Mom used to hang. It was gone, replaced by a generic landscape autumn trees in gold and orange. Pretty, inoffensive, and utterly meaningless. I went looking for the portrait. In the attic, under a stained blanket, behind a stack of labeled boxes. XMAS, Abigail's school files, Jack's records, Harper's stuff. My name written in Sharpie like an afterthought. There, behind everything, was the frame, my painting of Mom. Her eyes soft, her lips curled in that half-smile she wore when she tasted something just right. Madison had wrapped it in bubble wrap, neatly, like she thought she was doing me a favor. I didn't take it out. Not then. I just sat there, in the dust and dark, and asked myself something I had never dared to ask before. What if this house isn't mine anymore? There's a sound you know so well, you don't even realize you've memorized it until the moment it doesn't come. For me, it was the click of the front door unlocking. I had just come back from New York. My graduation gown was still in my suitcase, wrinkled from a bus ride that felt longer than it should have. I remember humming absently as I climbed the porch steps. I remember thinking stupidly, naively, that I couldn't wait to have coffee in the kitchen again, to feel like maybe life was going to start moving forward. Then I slid my key into the lock, and it stopped. I tried again. Slower, firmer. Nothing. My heart didn't drop right away. Denial is a quiet thing. It tells you to jiggle the handle, check the mail, look around. Maybe it's just jammed. Maybe you're tired. Maybe... Then I heard footsteps inside. "Hello?" I called through the door. "It's me." The door opened halfway. Madison. She looked surprised, almost guilty, but only for a second. "Oh, Harper," she said with that voice people use at funerals or when you're the last one to know a secret. "You're back early." I blinked. "It's my house." She paused, then laughed lightly. "Of course it is. Well, Jack thought it'd be safer to change the locks. There were a few break-ins down the street." Liar. She didn't even blink. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, my hands from shaking. "We figured you were busy in New York, and honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time." She didn't move from the doorway. Behind her, the living room looked different again. More of Mom's things gone. More of Madison's taste oozing through the walls like mold. It was subtle but deliberate. A couch cushion here, a lamp there. My home being rewritten, one decision at a time. "I'd like to come in," I said. Madison hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked in like a guest. Even the air felt different, like it had been aired out, perfumed, scrubbed of memory. Jack wasn't home. Abigail was in her room, blasting music through a door that might as well have been a fortress. Madison offered me tea. I declined. We sat in silence in the kitchen, she across from me, legs crossed, as if hosting a polite brunch for someone she barely knew. Finally, she smiled and said, "I know this transition hasn't been easy for you, Harper, but you're young. You'll find your place." That was when it hit me. She didn't see me as the owner of this house. She saw me as a temporary guest in a home she was actively claiming. I went to my room. They had repainted the walls, soft beige instead of the faded blue Mom had chosen when I was 14. My bedding had been replaced. My books were boxed up. And on the nightstand was a framed photo I had never seen before. Jack, Madison, and Abigail at some ski resort, grinning like a Christmas card. I wasn't in it. I sat down on the edge of the bed and let the silence wrap around me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't grief mismanaged. This was a quiet erasure. And I had a sinking feeling it wasn't accidental. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, Because something inside me had shifted, like a pane of glass cracking down the middle, just enough for the cold air to leak through. I lay in bed, staring at the beige ceiling Madison had chosen, listening to the quiet hum of a refrigerator that no longer held Mom's homemade fig jam. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded, with questions, with knowing. Why would they change the locks without telling me? Why did my room feel like a spare? Why did she speak like this house had always been hers? At 3:12 a.m., I got up, wrapped myself in a hoodie, and pulled out the old fireproof box my mom used to keep at the back of the closet in her bedroom, the one that smelled faintly of lavender and burnt sugar. It was where she kept everything that mattered: birth certificates, a lock of my baby hair, my first crayon drawing of a cake, and tucked inside a yellow folder labeled Legal, House, and Business was the will. I sat on the hardwood floor, heart thudding as I read it by flashlight. Everything, the house, the bakery, the land, all of it was in my name, not shared, not in trust, not pending, mine. My mom had made it clear. For Harper, so she'll always have a place to return to. I pressed my hand against the page as if touching the ink could make her voice come back. For a second, it almost did. But that moment passed, and the cold clarity returned. My father knew. He must have. He'd signed as a witness, which meant all of this, the repainted walls, the replaced locks, the silent reshuffling of memories, wasn't just Madison. It was him. He had let it happen, maybe even encouraged it. Maybe love isn't taken away from you. Maybe it's given away freely, quietly, and without apology. That hurt in a way I hadn't prepared for. I made copies of the will the next day, 3 in fact, 1 for me, 1 for a lawyer I hadn't hired yet, and 1 I kept in my bag, just in case the house disappeared while I wasn't looking. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. Something told me I needed to wait, to understand what I was really up against, and the next clue came sooner than I expected. Abigail, bored one afternoon, left her laptop open in the kitchen. I didn't mean to snoop, but my eyes caught a tab on the screen. Maddie's Kitchen, Branding Proposal, Reimagining Small-Town Tradition. There, in the mock-up logo, was a little whisk, the same whisk design from Mom's original bakery sign. My stomach turned. I clicked the file open. Menus, branding kits, social media handles, scheduled renovations for the bakery, a new name, a relaunch, all scheduled for fall. And nowhere was there a mention of my mother. It wasn't just the house. They were taking the bakery, the legacy, the soul. And they were doing it behind my back, smiling in my face while they gutted my mother's memory with pastel fonts and catchy slogans. I closed the laptop and walked outside. I needed air, the kind of air that doesn't come through repainted walls or filtered smiles. I stood on the front porch, watching the wind bend the trees, and I made a decision. No more silence, no more waiting. The next move was mine. I didn't plan the conversation. I didn't rehearse it in the mirror. I just waited for the right moment, the one where I couldn't hold it in anymore. It came one Tuesday morning, quiet and gray, when I walked into the kitchen and found him pouring coffee into his favorite chipped mug, the one Mom used to tease him about never washing properly. He looked up, smiled, faintly. "Morning," he said. I didn't answer. I pulled out the manila folder and placed it on the table between us. He looked down at it, then back at me. "What's this?" "You know what it is." He didn't open it, just stood there with his hand resting on the edge, like it might burn him if he touched it. "You signed this," I said. "You were there when she made it. You knew the house and the bakery were mine." A long silence stretched between us. "I didn't think you were ready," he finally said. The calm in my voice surprised even me. "That wasn't your call," he sighed. "Madison, she didn't know. I didn't tell her everything. It just got complicated." I felt something in me fracture, not because I didn't expect that answer, but because I did, and that made it worse. "You let her believe this house was yours," I said. "You let her act like she belonged here more than I did, like Mom never existed." He didn't argue, didn't even flinch. I just wanted peace, he said quietly. After your mother died, I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know how to be a father to someone who looked like her every time she walked in the room. That was the part that cut deepest, because I did look like her. The same eyes, the same way of folding my arms when I was hurt, the same stubbornness. And maybe that was why he couldn't face me. I'm not her, I said. I'm your daughter. He stared at the floor. I thought, I said slowly, after everything she gave you, the least you could do was protect what she left behind. He sat down heavily, like the words carried weight. I didn't think it mattered anymore, he muttered. A house is just a house. A bakery is just a building. No, I said. Not to her, and not to me. He didn't have a reply, and I realized something right then, not with anger, not even with grief. My father was never cruel. He was weak. He took the easier road, the quieter betrayal. Not because he wanted to hurt me, but because silence cost him less than confrontation. But in doing so, he had let someone else dismantle everything my mother built. You have until the end of the week, I said. You and Madison. I want you out. He looked up sharply. You don't mean that. I do, I said. This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary. He didn't fight me. He didn't cry. He just nodded. Like a man who knew, somewhere deep down, that this was always going to be the ending. The thing about war is, sometimes it starts with a knife. In my case, it was a paring knife. Small, precise, sitting neatly beside a lemon on the cutting board, as if it belonged to someone who actually understood what that blade meant. I walked into the kitchen that afternoon, 2 days after speaking with my father, and found Madison standing over the counter in an apron that read, "Bless this mess." She was slicing citrus. The bakery's old recipe binder was open beside her, my mother's binder, the one with handwritten notes in the margins, grease-stained corners, and a sprig of dried thyme still pressed between the pages. I stood in the doorway and watched her flip the page with the confidence of ownership. She didn't notice me at first. When she did, she didn't flinch. "Oh, Harper, you startled me." She smiled, soft and effortless, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "I hope you don't mind. I was just testing a few things. Jack told me about the lemon bars Olivia used to make. I thought maybe I'd bring them back, modernize them maybe. For the relaunch." The relaunch. She said it like it was inevitable, like it belonged to her. I walked in slowly, each step sinking deeper into something that didn't feel like a kitchen anymore. It felt like a crime scene. "Put the binder down," I said. Madison looked confused for half a second, then amused. "Harper, come on. It's just a recipe. It's not sacred." "It is to me." She laughed gently. "I know this must be hard for you, all this change, but it's time to move forward. The bakery has to evolve." I stepped closer. She left it to me. Not the building, not just the keys, the vision, the feeling. "You're not evolving anything. You're erasing her." Her expression tightened. "I've poured months into this project," she said. "Marketing, outreach, design. I've reimagined the space, and frankly, the town is ready for something new. Fresh blood." I didn't blink. "They're ready for her," she scoffed. "Your mother's brand was sweet, but dated. It's time for something more profitable." That's when I realized she didn't just want the kitchen. She wanted the legacy. She wanted to inherit something she never earned, wear someone else's brilliance like it was her reflection. I reached across the counter and closed the binder. Madison's hand tensed on the knife. "You can either walk out now," I said quietly, "or we can take this to court. But either way, this ends today." Her face hardened. "You can't be serious." "I've already spoken with a lawyer. The will is clear. The house, the bakery, everything, including that recipe binder, is mine. And you're trespassing." She stepped back, slowly. "No one's going to back you," she said. "You don't have experience. You don't have investors. You don't even have a plan." I didn't look away. "I have something better. I have a name people remember. A woman they loved. And I have a kitchen that still smells like her." Madison stared at me, and for the first time since she'd set foot in that house, I saw fear, not of me, but of the truth. She turned, wiped her hands with robotic grace, and left the room. And as I stood there, alone again in my mother's kitchen, I felt something settle. Not victory, not pride, just space. Space that used to feel stolen, and now finally felt mine. They left on a Thursday. No drama, no final words, no slamming of doors, just silence. Madison took her French press, her eucalyptus diffuser, and her curated gallery wall of live, laugh, love prints. Abigail slammed one cabinet teenage resistance in its mildest form and left behind a half-empty bottle of lavender shampoo in the bathroom I didn't want to share in the first place. Jack didn't even say goodbye. I heard the tires crunch on the gravel. Then, nothing. I stood in the front hallway, the kind where sound used to bounce off picture frames and shopping bags and Mom's humming. Now it just echoed. Empty doesn't always feel like freedom. Sometimes it feels like an aftershock. I walked from room to room like I was reintroducing myself to a home I used to know intimately. The living room smelled like fresh paint and forgotten promises. My bedroom had beige walls but felt less hostile now, like it was holding its breath with me. The kitchen. The kitchen had returned to something resembling itself. That night, I made tea in silence. No voices, no tension in the air, no one rearranging drawers behind my back. And still, I cried. Not the kind of sobbing that shakes your body, but the kind that slides out of you quietly, like steam rising from a cup. Because you don't just grieve people. You grieve the versions of them you once believed in. And I had spent most of my life believing my father was decent. Not perfect, but decent. Someone who might never bake cookies or remember birthdays, but would at least respect what mattered. But he didn't protect what Mom left. He didn't protect me. He just walked away when things got inconvenient. And I had to decide right here, in this moment, if I would build a life on that bitterness, or if I'd build something else. The next morning, I opened every window in the house, let the air in, let the dust go. I took Madison's furniture to the curb, boxed up what wasn't mine, reclaimed what was. I found Mom's recipe cards again, stuffed in a kitchen drawer behind a stack of junk mail. I spread them across the counter like they were sacred texts, each one written in her handwriting, rounded and imperfect, like she'd never rushed a thing in her life. I started with something simple. Lemon lavender shortbread. I baked in silence. No music, no instructions. Just muscle memory and grief mixing with butter and flour. When the oven timer dinged, I pulled out a tray of slightly overbaked, slightly uneven cookies that made the entire kitchen smell like 2012 again. I took a bite. Too much zest. Not enough sugar. But God, it tasted like home. The bakery hadn't been open in over a year. The windows were dusty, the sign cracked, and the interior smelled like disused wood, flour, and the ghost of cinnamon rolls long gone cold. But it was mine. I unlocked the front door one morning just after sunrise. The light cut through the silence like a scalpel, landing on the glass display cases, the empty chalkboard menu, the black and white photo of my mother behind the counter, still smiling, still present. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. Mom used to say the first step to baking anything worthwhile wasn't flour or eggs. It was intention. You had to know why you were doing it, otherwise it would always fall flat. So I asked myself, was I doing this to honor her? Or was I finally ready to build something of my own? The answer surprised me. It was both. I started cleaning that same day, one corner at a time, mopping floors, scrubbing countertops, polishing the espresso machine until my reflection stared back at me, tired but clearer than it had been in months. A few old customers passed by, peering through the window. Some waved. A few smiled. One woman even pressed her hand to the glass and mouthed, "Is it really coming back?" I nodded, and for the first time, I meant it. It wasn't just about reopening. It was about returning. Returning to the memory of what mattered. Returning to who I was before I questioned if I belonged. But not as a replica of my mother, as her daughter, as Harper. I renamed the bakery, not a full rebrand. I didn't have the heart to erase Olive in time. But I added something small, something quiet etched just beneath the original hand-painted lettering. And Harper. Olive and Thyme and Harper. Not in place of her. With her. On opening day, I didn't expect a line. I didn't even expect customers. I expected failure, anxiety, maybe a broken oven. What I got was a community. Former students of Mom's cooking classes brought flowers. Kids she once gave free muffins to brought handmade signs. A man I didn't recognize told me, "Your mom helped me propose, right at that table." I served lemon shortbread. Not perfect, still too much zest, still a little crooked. But I watched as people bit into them and smiled. Not because they tasted like the past, but because somehow they tasted like coming home. The bakery didn't just open, it exhaled, like the walls had been holding their breath all this time, waiting for someone to remember what joy sounded like. Sunlight poured through the front windows every morning, hitting the countertop just like it used to when Mom would dust powdered sugar over warm pastries. Except now, it was my hand doing the dusting. I painted the walls a soft eggshell blue, hung back the original chalkboard, still smudged with ghost recipes from years ago. I didn't replace the tables or chase some shiny rebrand. I didn't hire influencers or launch a viral campaign. I made muffins. I poured coffee. I looked people in the eye when I handed them something warm and imperfect, and mine. There was peace in repetition, in kneading dough before sunrise, in watching the same neighbor come in every Friday for the same banana loaf, in writing daily quotes on the board like Mom used to do. I started with hers. Start where you are, flower will follow. The grief didn't vanish, it just changed shape. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud in the kitchen, half expecting her to answer. Sometimes I'd still walk past the house and imagine Jack sitting on the porch with his newspaper in silence. But I didn't carry the same weight anymore, because I finally understood something. Closure doesn't come when the other person apologizes. It comes when you stop needing them to. I still hadn't heard from my father. He didn't show up for the reopening, didn't text, didn't call. And strangely, that was okay. There was a time when that silence would have broken me. But now it just meant the room had more space for laughter, for music, for the click of my own steps across the bakery floor. One evening, after closing, I stood alone in the kitchen. The light was soft, golden, melting into every corner like it belonged there. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was holding on to something lost. I felt like I was living inside something found. Spring rolled in quietly, the way good things often do, without fanfare, without warning. Just a little more sun in the morning, a few brave tulips pushing through the ground outside the bakery, and the smell of yeast rising before dawn. One Sunday afternoon, I sat outside the shop, a cup of coffee warming my palms, and watched people come and go. 2 little kids tugged at their mom's sleeve, begging for another cookie. An elderly man waved as he passed, like he'd done every Sunday since the reopening. There was a teenage girl reading a novel by the window, the same window where I used to sketch in high school while Mom restocked the counter. The world didn't stop when I lost her, but it waited, long enough for me to catch up. Inside, the bakery looked nothing like it did during the Madison years. It didn't sparkle with new fixtures or sleek redesigns. It felt lived in, rooted, as if it had grown into itself all over again. There were still days I missed my mother so badly it caught me mid-sentence. Days when I wished she'd walk through the back door, wipe flour off her apron and say, "Let's fix that ratio, sweetheart. You're going too heavy on the vanilla." But her absence no longer left a hole. It left a presence, a whisper, a warmth. Somehow, grief had become part of the recipe now. Like salt in dough, it doesn't make things sweet, but it brings out the depth in everything else. One afternoon, while cleaning the counter, I found a folded note tucked behind the old register. Mom's handwriting. Faded, but unmistakable. Harper, if you're reading this, you've found your way back. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Not for keeping everything the same, but for making it yours. Love always, Mom. I sat down on the kitchen floor and let myself feel it all. The anger, the ache, the gratitude. There was no dramatic music, no final confrontation. No need for revenge or reconciliation. Just this quiet knowing. I didn't just get the house back, or the bakery, or the recipes. I got myself back. And that was enough. As the sun dipped lower and bathed the bakery in gold, I turned off the lights, locked the front door, and stood for a moment on the sidewalk outside. A breeze passed by, warm and soft. It carried the scent of sugar and citrus, and something else I couldn't quite name. But it felt familiar. It felt like home.